In the pre-dawn darkness of December 4th, 2003, a lone silver Honda Accord sat partially submerged in a Pennsylvania creek. Its engine was still running, but the headlights were off. Nearby, a man in a suit and overcoat lay face down in the frigid water. His name was Jonathan Luna, a 38-year-old federal prosecutor from Baltimore. He had been stabbed dozens of times, yet the shallow wounds hadn't killed him. Instead, he drowned in that icy stream. The gruesome discovery sent shockwaves through law enforcement and Luna's community. How did a respected U.S. attorney end up dead 95 miles from home in rural Lancaster County? More than 20 years later, the case remains unsolved, shrouded in mystery and speculation. In this episode of the Shelldrake Files, we'll retrace Jonathan Luna's final hours and explore the theories, from foul play to internal corruption and even intelligence involvement that surround his puzzling death. Jonathan Paul Luna's life was, in many ways, an American success story. Born to a Filipino father and African-American mother, he grew up in the tough Patterson housing projects of the South Bronx, New York. He excelled academically, earning degrees from Fordham University and the University of North Carolina Law School. By 2003, Luna had built a promising career. He served as a prosecutor in Brooklyn before becoming an assistant U.S. attorney in Baltimore, Maryland. Colleagues and friends knew him as hardworking, compassionate, and dedicated. He was a family man, married with 2 young sons, and often went above and beyond to help others. One former co-worker described him as an incredibly kind guy who was as good as they come. By late 2003, Luna's professional star was on the rise, but he was also under pressure. He had been working long hours on a high-profile narcotics case, and the final days of that trial would prove fateful. On the morning of Wednesday, December 3rd, 2003, Luna was in court handling a drug conspiracy case against 2 men, Dion Smith and Walter Poindexter, who were accused of running a violent heroin ring out of a Baltimore recording studio. Luna and the defense attorney spent the day negotiating a plea bargain to avoid further trial. The deal was set to be finalized in court the next morning, and by all accounts, Luna was determined to get everything in order. It hadn't been easy. A crucial informant in the case had unexpectedly changed his testimony, complicating the prosecution's plans. Nonetheless, by that evening, a plea agreement was on paper, sparing the defendants from harsher sentences. Around 9 p.m. on December 3rd, Luna told a colleague he was heading home to finish drafting the plea agreement and would return later or have it ready by morning. He left some essential items behind in his downtown office. Notably, his cell phone and even his eyeglasses were left on his desk. Luna then walked to the parking garage and drove out at 11:38 p.m. in his Honda Accord. He did not go home to his wife that night. Instead, his actions over the next few hours would create a baffling timeline that investigators are still trying to piece together. 11:38 p.m. on December 3rd. Luna's car exits the Baltimore courthouse garage and heads north on Interstate 95, away from his home in the suburbs. He took an odd route, not a direct highway to Lancaster County, and it left a clear electronic trail. Whoever was driving made deliberate choices. Luna's Easy Pass toll transponder was used normally as he drove through Maryland and into Delaware, logging his car's movement along the interstate. But after crossing into New Jersey and Pennsylvania, the driver switched tactics and paid tolls with cash, avoiding further electronic records. It seemed Luna, or someone with him, did not want to be easily traced after a point. 12:57 a.m. At a highway rest stop near Newark, Delaware, Luna's debit card was used to withdraw $200 from an ATM. Security cameras later confirmed Luna's car was there, though images were too grainy to determine if he was alone. 2:47 a.m. The Accord crossed the Delaware River and into Pennsylvania via the Turnpike toll bridge. By now, it was early December 4th. Temperatures were cold and traffic on the Turnpike was sparse at that hour. 3:20 a.m. A purchase was made with Luna's debit card at a Sunoco gas station in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania. Records indicate the purchase included fuel and even some bottled water or soda. It's a small but eerie detail, buying drinks during what might be a life and death ordeal. Investigators later noted how strange it would be for kidnappers or accomplices to allow a victim to casually buy refreshments in the middle of the night. This stop, like the others, suggests that Luna may not have been under obvious duress, or that he may have knew his companion if one was present. 4:04 a.m. Luna's car exited the Pennsylvania Turnpike at the Reading-Lancaster interchange. The paper toll ticket retrieved from his car was later found spotted with Jonathan's blood, a chilling sign that by 4 a.m. he had already been injured. From the Turnpike, the Honda traveled on local roads into the heart of Lancaster County's Amish farm country under the moonless sky. Sometime between 4:30 and 5 a.m., the Honda Accord was driven off the main road in Brecknock Township, Pennsylvania, behind a rural business called Sensig and Weaver Well Drilling. There, along a 2-lane country road, the car was abandoned in a shallow creek known as Dry Tavern Road Stream. The front end of the car dipped into the water, as if it had rolled slowly forward. Whoever was behind the wheel then vanished into the night. 5 a.m. The first employee arrived at the drilling company to start the morning shift. 5:30 a.m. Another worker spotted the silver Honda with its nose in the creek and blood smeared on the driver's door and fender. The car's lights were off, but the engine was still idling and a child's booster seat sat in the back, a haunting reminder of Luna's young children. Scattered on the back seat and floor was about $200 in cash, as if someone had emptied a wallet or money envelope in haste. A large pool of blood soaked the rear floorboard, suggesting a significant wound had been bleeding inside the vehicle. Alarmed by the grim scene, the workers immediately called the police. Pennsylvania State Police arrived to a baffling backdrop. Jonathan Luna was found lying face down in the freezing creek beneath the front of his car's engine. He was still dressed in his business attire, suit, tie, and black overcoat, and his federal courthouse ID badge hung around his neck. Investigators could hardly believe what they saw. Luna's body was covered in blood, marked by 36 stab wounds concentrated in his chest and neck area. His throat had been slit, and there were cuts and punctures on his hands, likely from clutching the blade or defensive struggles. The weapon was nowhere to be seen at first, but was soon identified as Luna's own pocket knife, which was recovered in the creek. Many of the wounds were surprisingly shallow cuts, as if inflicted tentatively or self-inflicted, but one stab had punctured Luna's left carotid artery, a catastrophic wound that caused significant bleeding. Still, the ultimate cause of death was not the stabbing, it was drowning. The coroner would conclude that Luna was likely alive, though gravely wounded, when he went into the water and finally succumbed to asphyxiation in the brook. Nothing about the scene neatly added up. The immediate assumption might be a carjacking or robbery gone wrong, but Luna's wallet and ID were found on his body, and money was literally left fluttering around the car. The car itself had no damage from a crash. It appeared to have been slowly driven into the creek rather than careening off the road. Investigators on the scene muttered that the whole setup looked staged or just weird. By 8:05 a.m., Lancaster County Coroner Barry Walp officially pronounced Jonathan Luna dead and, based on the autopsy, ruled it a homicide by stabbing and drowning. Law enforcement from multiple jurisdictions, local police, Pennsylvania State Police, FBI, and the Maryland U.S. Attorney's Office all descended on the case, grasping for clues. But as the days turned into months, the mystery only deepened. From the outset, Jonathan Luna's death sparked conflict among investigators. To this day, it straddles the line between an unresolved murder and something potentially more complicated. Lancaster County authorities firmly believe someone killed Luna. The sheer number of wounds, the bruises suggesting a struggle, and the presence of a second unknown blood type at the scene pointed to homicide. In fact, the forensic team did find a partial fingerprint that wasn't Luna's and traces of someone else's blood in the car, lending weight to the idea that another individual was involved. Local officials publicly maintained that Luna died at another's hand and that a killer was on the loose. The FBI, however, was not convinced, at least not officially. After a year-long investigation, FBI spokesman announced there was no evidence to show he was with anybody after leaving the courthouse that night. The Bureau leaned toward the theory that Luna's wounds were self-inflicted and that his death might even have been a tragically staged suicide. It was an astonishing claim, given how brutal the scene appeared. But FBI investigators uncovered troubling signs in Luna's personal and professional life that, in their view, could point to motive for self-harm or a staged abduction. As the investigation unfolded, multiple speculative theories emerged to explain Jonathan Luna's fate. One theory, favored by some federal investigators, is that Jonathan Luna's injuries were self-inflicted in a desperate attempt to stage a kidnapping or assault. Proponents of this idea cite the nature of the knife wounds. Many were shallow hesitation cuts, and there were relatively few deep defensive wounds on his hands. It's conceivable, they argue, that Luna could have used his own penknife to cut himself to create the appearance of an attack. Why would a successful prosecutor do such a horrifying thing to himself? The answer might lie in a series of stressful events and secrets that were weighing on Luna in late 2003. Investigators learned that Luna was scheduled to take a polygraph test on December 4th, 2003, the very day he was found dead. The lie detector test was regarding $36,000 in missing cash evidence from a bank robbery case Luna had prosecuted the year before. In that 2002 case, a large stash of money had vanished from the evidence locker, and an internal inquiry was looking at everyone with access. Luna had even postponed the polygraph once, citing workload. This looming test raised suspicions. Could Luna have been involved in the missing money, or feared that he was under unjust suspicion? Phone records show Luna was anxious enough about work that he had called a colleague late at night on December 3rd, promising to fax over some documents, faxes that he never actually sent. Furthermore, it turned out Luna had personal financial troubles, about $25,000 in credit card debt that he kept hidden from his wife. He had also been linked to a private online dating profile seeking extramarital relationships, something that, if true, could damage his reputation. These revelations painted a picture of a man under immense pressure, professionally and personally. Those who support the suicide or accident theory posit that Jonathan Luna might have concocted a plan to make it appear he was attacked or kidnapped, hoping to gain sympathy from co-workers and avoid the consequences of the polygraph and his other problems. Perhaps he drove around aimlessly to build a story, injuring himself along the way. Under this scenario, the fatal stab to his artery could have been an accident, a staged scene that went too far. An anonymous federal official, when asked about Luna's case, theorized that he didn't mean to kill himself. In other words, Luna might have intended to survive the ordeal as a sympathetic victim of an attack, but miscalculated the danger. This theory could explain why no assailant has ever been identified. If he was truly alone, then there was no attacker to catch. Yet the staged suicide theory is hard for many to swallow. Luna's family vehemently rejects the idea that he would abandon his wife and children in such a gruesome fashion, or that he was capable of the level of violence inflicted. Indeed, some of Luna's wounds seem impossible to self-inflict, such as the deep gash across his throat or the blunt force trauma indicated by the bruising to his groin. The sheer absurdity of someone driving themselves into a remote creek and stabbing themselves 36 times has led others to label the suicide theory as ridiculous. If Luna truly tried to fake his own abduction, it would be one of the most bizarre and ultimately tragic hoaxes imaginable. Was he that desperate, or is there another explanation? The second theory is far more straightforward. Jonathan Luna was murdered by one or more assailants in revenge or to silence him. As an assistant U.S. attorney, Luna had prosecuted a slew of dangerous criminals, drug dealers, gang members, violent felons, and sex offenders who might have held a grudge. Early suspicion naturally fell on the two heroin dealers in the Smith Poindexter case that Luna was wrapping up on the night he disappeared. However, both men were in custody that night, and in fact the plea deal Luna negotiated was favorable to them, shaving years off their sentences. Harming the prosecutor at that stage could only jeopardize the deal. Investigators quickly concluded those defendants had neither opportunity nor motive to kill Luna. But Luna's docket was full of other cases. Could someone he helped put behind bars have sought revenge? Luna had received no specific threats that anyone was aware of, yet the world of narcotics and crime he fought against was not short on ruthless individuals. Another angle is that Luna might have known his killer personally, perhaps someone he trusted enough to meet late at night. The timeline suggests that he willingly drove north for hours, potentially to rendezvous with someone. One theory speculates Luna could have picked up a passenger back in Baltimore, explaining why a pool of Luna's blood was found in the back seat of the Honda. That detail hints that Luna may have been bleeding and possibly incapacitated in the back of the car while a second person drove it to the creek. If that's true, the cash scattered about could have been an attempt to make the scene look like a robbery, or simply fallen out during a struggle. Some investigators believed the crime scene was staged to confuse authorities. For example, Luna's own penknife as the weapon might be a red herring, used by an offender who then left it behind. The remote location of the body also raises questions. Was someone waiting there for him? Did Luna arrange a secret meeting in that out-of-the-way spot, either for work or personal reasons, only to be ambushed? Over the years, Luna's name has been linked with various unsolved underworld rumors. There was talk that he might have been investigating or involved in something deeper, possibly related to corruption. In a strange twist long after his death, one of the defense attorneys he had worked with, a former friend named Kenneth Ravenel, was indicted for allegedly aiding drug traffickers in Baltimore. This fueled speculation that maybe Luna stumbled upon internal corruption or a dangerous secret involving powerful figures. If so, murder could have been a calculated hit to ensure his silence. Some law enforcement veterans point out that if it were a professional hit, the method is highly unusual. Hired killers don't typically drive victims around for hours and stab them dozens of times with a small knife. A professional takeout? They put one in the back of your head and dump you, one investigator noted, observing how Luna's drawn-out ordeal didn't fit a typical contract killing. The overkill and personal nature of his wounds suggest an angry, perhaps vindictive attacker, not a coldly efficient one. To date, no suspect has been publicly identified. Authorities have offered a $100,000 reward for information leading to a conviction. Tips and leads have trickled in by the hundreds, but none have panned out. Luna's friends remain convinced that he was murdered and frustrated that justice has never been served. The homicide theory leaves us with a haunting image. Jonathan Luna driving into the darkness with someone he perhaps trusted, only to be brutally betrayed and left to die in a creek. But who that person could be and why they did it remains unknown. The third category of theories veers into the shadowy realm of conspiracy and intelligence involvement. These speculations suggest that Luna's death was not a random act nor solely the result of his personal troubles, but rather the outcome of something larger and more secretive. One notion floated on the fringes is that Luna might have been caught in internal corruption beyond the missing $36,000. Perhaps he knew of wrongdoing by colleagues or law enforcement agents. Could someone within the government have wanted Luna out of the way? This theory sometimes points to the curious stance of the FBI in this case. Observers note that the FBI's quickness to label Luna's death as a possible suicide, despite so much evidence to the contrary, might indicate an institutional desire to avoid a messy homicide investigation that could implicate an informant or an insider. It hasn't escaped notice that one of the men in Luna's last case was reportedly a confidential informant for the government. If Luna's death had anything to do with that case, there's speculation that powerful interests might have moved to keep details under wraps. More outlandish theories even hint at intelligence agencies or clandestine operations being involved. Was Jonathan Luna working on, or aware of, something that drew the attention of agencies beyond the Department of Justice? There's no hard evidence of CIA or intelligence community involvement, but the very mystique of the case invites such conjecture. Every unanswered question, why drive to rural Pennsylvania? Who was the second blood type? Why were certain records sealed? Provides fertile ground for conspiracy theories. One example, in 2020, a private detective uncovered that Lancaster County still possessed sealed case documents, including Luna's autopsy records, that were thought to be federal. When a judge was petitioned to release those records, the request was denied. The judge ruled that making the information public would pose the threat of substantially hindering the ongoing investigation. To some, this secrecy is a sign that authorities might be hiding something significant, perhaps something that points to a larger conspiracy or sensitive information related to national security or corruption. Could Luna have been cooperating in an inquiry? Or the opposite, could he have been under covert scrutiny? These questions transform Luna's death from a local crime story into a potential intelligence mystery, where answers are obscured by classified files and official silence. Of course, these theories remain highly speculative. No evidence has come to light publicly tying the CIA, FBI, or any intelligence program directly to Jonathan Luna's demise. The unresolved nature of the case, combined with odd jurisdictional issues, such as federal investigators closing the case administratively while local authorities keep it open as a homicide, fuels the notion that perhaps the truth itself is being deliberately kept in the dark. In the span of a single night, Jonathan Luna went from a respected prosecutor wrapping up a routine case to the center of one of the most perplexing mysteries in modern Pennsylvania history. Was he a man pushed to the brink by personal demons and miscalculation, or an unwitting victim of vengeance, or even a pawn in a deeper plot? Decades later, we still don't have the answers. No arrests have ever been made. Luna's desk phone and glasses, left behind that night, are like ghosts of plans unfulfilled. He never returned to finish that plea agreement. Instead, his name has been etched alongside unanswered questions. Investigators say the case remains active and open, and they hold out hope that new evidence or witnesses might someday come forward. Perhaps someone, somewhere, knows more about what happened in those dark early morning hours of December 4th, 2003. Until then, Jonathan Luna's death will continue to haunt all who seek justice for him. It stands as a chilling tale of a night ride to nowhere, a life cut short, and a truth that, for now, lies submerged in that Pennsylvania creek, as murky and elusive as ever.